You're Human and You. Written by Mad Max the Black. Chapter 16. The Gathering Storm, Part 1. Branches snapped at my arms and legs as I followed the pale horse deeper into the forest. An eerie silence had fallen around us. Not even the wind could be heard blowing through the trees. In fact, the only noise that could be heard was the sound of the horse's hooves striking an exposed root every now and then. As it walked, I noticed that the branches didn't seem to affect the horse as it delved deeper into the undergrowth. I, however, was not so lucky, and my arms were soon covered in little cuts and scratches. Shivering, I got closer to the back of the horse, causing its tail to brush against me as we walked. The horse looked back at me, as if to make sure I was still following it. As its magenta eyes peered into mine, it snorted once before it returned its gaze back to what was in front of it. Ducking under a branch as it whipped overhead, I winced as the smaller branches on it hit my face, leaving a small welt. The horse wasn't aggressive towards me, but she wasn't that caring either. Rubbing at the welt, I chanced a quick glance behind me. Darkness spread through the forest behind us, but luckily I couldn't see any signs of the creature that had been chasing me. The dim light was coming from the horse, holding the darkness at bay. It wasn't much, but it was something. With my attention still directed behind me, I didn't notice that the horse had come to a stop until I bumped into its flank. It snorted loudly, looking back at me with a confused expression. Realizing what I had done, I quickly shot the creature a sheepish smile. The horse shook its head, nickering softly, before turning and motioning for me to look at something in front of us. Glancing up, I realized that we had come to the edge of another clearing. That in and of itself was good, but that wasn't what caught my eye. This clearing was larger than the first, at least twice as big, resting half in the clearing and half hidden among the smothering trees around us. A massive castle proudly stood. Made completely out of large graying white stones, it loomed far above us, its towers and spires reaching towards the sky. Golden roofs, dulled with age and wear, darkened the top of the spires. Masses of vines and other vegetation hung from the battlements. The forest was slowly reclaiming what had once belonged to it. Piles of rubble rested where once great structures had stood. The entire castle was slowly crumbling away and had fallen into disrepair, but it was still easy to see that, in its prime, it would have been a magnificent sight. I was drawn out of my daze by the horse beside me. Neighing softly, it nudged me with one of its wings, before slowly making its way towards the castle. I followed quickly, unable to tear my gaze from the sight before me. Something about the massive structure before me set me on edge. Making our way across the clearing, we approached the main gate. The horse nudged one of the large rotting wooden doors open with her muzzle. They creaked slightly before swinging silently open, allowing us entry. Glancing once again at me, the horse slipped inside. Not wanting to be left alone in this eerie place, I followed it inside. The door slowly closed behind us, trapping us inside the castle. Looking around, I found that we were inside of a large hall. Tall pillars stood evenly spaced across the hall, some standing tall, while others were broken and cracked, no longer able to support anything more than themselves. The broken ceiling was far above us, bits and pieces of it missing due to the stress of time. Debris littered the cracked marble floors. Bits of roof, wall, and pillar were scattered across the hall. The walls, covered here and there by worn, ripped tapestries, were etched with carvings. Some depicted what looked like ponies in armor, Pegasus soldiers clashing together in the air as, below them, unicorn mages shot bursts of magic and fire at each other. Earth ponies crouched behind shields, wielding spears at all those who dared approach them. Walking down the hall, I watched as slowly the carvings slowly turned from that of war to that of a more peaceful time. Ponies grouped together, some of them laughing while others played in flower-covered fields. The horse seemed to smile as it observed the now happy carvings, nickering softly to itself. I just stared, my face scrunched up in confusion. I had no idea what I was looking at, but it felt important. As we approached the end of the hall and the double door situated there, I noticed there was a mural painted on the floor. It looked like a group of ponies, unicorns, earth ponies, and pegasi alike, gazing into a cave with a look of innocent curiosity. Deep within the dark confines of the cave, I could just barely make out the image of something slowly emerging. Staring down at the painting, I tried to make out what was hidden in the cave. However, my thoughts were interrupted as the horse nudged me with its nose, exhaling gently on my back. With a slight shove, it pushed me forward towards the double doors. Approaching the giant doors, I rested my shoulder against the polished steel. Grunting loudly, I pushed with all my might, the sounds of effort echoing around the aged hall. With a great screeching noise, the doors slowly swung open, their hinges protesting loudly as they moved. I winced at the horrible noise, but continued shoving until both doors were open wide. With a snort, the horse slipped past me and into the new room. Groaning, I followed close behind. Breathing heavily, I glanced around the room we had just entered. It appeared to be a throne room of sorts. Large windows adorned the walls, each frame empty, except for bits of broken glass, clearly showing the night sky outside. Faded pictures covered the walls, each one depicting a pony or group of ponies, the details lost to time. A faded and moth-eaten strip of carpet ran from the door all the way back to the two thrones, sitting at the end of the room. Both of them were empty. Both of them were broken. The horse's ears drooped as it gazed upon the thrones. Ignoring my companion, I slowly approached the thrones. As I drew nearer, I noticed that a statue stood between them. It didn't fit with the rest of the castle's decor, though. Everything up until now had been pony-related. Pony armor, pony pictures, pony paintings. This statue, however, appeared to be that of a human. It was carved completely out of black marble, white veins running through the entire thing. It appeared to be made out of one piece of material, carved perfectly with no cracks or chunks missing. Unlike everything around it, the statue looked like it could have just been crafted the other day. The only flaw that I could see with it is that it had no face. A blank surface sat where a face should be, my reflection gazing back at me. For a split second, it looked like it had my face, but then I leaned back and the illusion was broken. Pulling my eyes from the statue before me, I glanced around. As I looked closer at the room, I began to notice that it wasn't the only statue here. Hundreds of black marble statues littered the throne room, hidden in corners and within shadows, concealed easily in the darkness. I had walked right past them without even noticing. Stunned, I turned and looked out to one of the many windows. Down in the courtyard, I saw it was filled with black statues as well. All of them human. All of them without a face. Turning my attention back to the statue by the thrones, I reached up and ran my fingers over the smooth surface of its face. The marble was cool to the touch, and I shivered slightly. Leaving my hand on it, I paused as I felt the statue vibrate slightly. Leaning closer, I could make out a faint sound coming from its chest. Placing my ear against the statue, my eyes widened as I realized what I was hearing. It's a heartbeat. I breathed, pulling myself away from the statue. Turning, I shot a confused look at the horse behind me. It just stared back at me with a sad gaze. Opening my mouth, I started to ask it a question, when I was interrupted by an ear-splitting roar that seemed to shake the very castle to its core.
You will help them, or you shall know no peace!
What's with you ponies and mornings? I growled, slamming my head on the kitchen table. Is there a law against sleeping in later than 8?
If you sleep in too late, you won't get anything done for the day.
Sunny chirped happily, eating her breakfast next to me. The jam was practically dripping from her saturated piece of toast in her hoof. Leaving my face on the table, I groaned and closed my eyes. I wanted nothing more than to return to my couch and fall back asleep, but it didn't look like that was going to happen. I'm a night owl amongst early birds, I thought glumly, as I heard Twilight moving around the library, humming softly to herself. The sound of birds chirping floated through the open kitchen window, a cool breeze wafting in as well. The sun was shining happily, and the distant sound of laughter could be heard coming from a direction of the marketplace. A gang of fillies ran by, happily enjoying whatever game they were currently playing. It's not natural for someone to be that happy this early in the morning.
What do you have against mornings?
Sunny asked through a mouthful of toast and jam. I have nothing against mornings. I love mornings, I sighed, lifting my head up and glaring at her. I just wish they came later in the day. Sunny laughed at that, spewing bits of toast across the table. Luckily, she dropped the issue, allowing me to return my head to the table and try to sleep once more into the sweet embrace of sleep. It had already been almost a week since Sunny Breeze had started living with us. She was already looking much better than she did when she first arrived. Her ribs were still visible, but with regular meals 3 times a day, she had started gaining back the weight she had lost when she had been on the run. Her appetite was insatiable. She consumed more than Spike and Twilight combined. I didn't know where she was putting all of it, but I figured it had something to do with her being a Pegasus. Flying probably burned a lot of calories, and she must have a high metabolism to be able to stay warm at high altitudes. That was just a theory, however, but I felt like it was a good one. Either way, Sunny was consuming almost as much food as me, and it was starting to affect our resources. Now, I want to point out that right now that Twilight is not poor, by any standards. According to what little I could dig up, years of being antisocial had done wonders for her bank account. Even after coming to Ponyville and making friends, Princess Celestia still sent her monthly stipends for her research. With all of this in mind, she had a pretty large pile of bits saved up, and with her now being a princess, she already got a steady stream of income coming from Canterlot. It had something to do with her allowance from the National Treasury. Despite all of this, Twilight tried to stress to me that we were working with a finite amount of money, and now that we had another mouth to feed, we had to start planning for what it could possibly run out. Twilight had even sat down and done the math. She found out exactly how long we could continue living like we were before the bits began to run out. I was unconvinced it was a problem. That was until she showed me the paper results. I could only stare in disbelief at the papers she had handed me. You know how long we had before we were broke? 12 years. Yep, you heard me right. That was how long our current budget will last us. 12 years. 12 years until we ran out of bits that was without Twilight receiving any more bits from any outside sources. You see now what I have to deal with sometimes. Twilight is a wonderful pony, God bless her soul, and I enjoy her company immensely. But she can be really paranoid sometimes. Sunny hadn't even been with us for a full week and Twilight was already fretting about how we were going to do in years in the future. How can someone so knowledgeable and so smart be so dense at the same time? If I didn't get to know better, I would say that she was trying to get rid of Sunny for some reason. I tried to calm her down, but once she has something like that in her head, it's hard to change her mind. I had to ask Spike for help, but he basically told me just to let her worry herself out. I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound very healthy. I tried my hardest to help her with her problem and calm her nerves. I sat down and helped her make budgets and spreadsheets. Do you ever make them without the help of a computer? Horrible. I tried to help her figure out how many bits we could spend per day, week, month, and year. I helped her as much as I possibly could, entertaining her pleas. That is, until she started waking me up early each day to help her plan. That's when all the sympathy for the mayor went out the window, and I basically told her that she was on her own. Not the nicest thing to do, but she had to learn that we were going to be fine. She had cried and pleaded for me to help her, but I ignored her. When she asked what I would do when we had no money to pay for food, I told her plain and simple that I would cross that bridge when I came to it. If it came to it at all. I don't know why she was making such a big deal about it. It was almost like she was trying to make me feel bad about something, or trying to focus on this problem in order to ignore something else that was on her mind. When I had finally gotten her to shut up, however, was when I pointed out that the minute she figured out the spell to send me home, she wouldn't have to worry about spending bits on me anymore. That seemed to cause her to become slightly more depressed, although I don't know why. At least she finally stopped worrying about her budget though, so that was good enough for me.
So what are we going to do today?
Sunny asked, finishing off her toast, draining her glass of orange juice in one gulp. She threw her dirty plates into the sink and stared at me expectantly. Ever since Twilight had started looking for the spell to get me home, Sunny had been the one hanging out with me. Sometimes I didn't know if Twilight wanted me to babysit her or for her to babysit me. It's getting rather stuffy in here, I replied, standing up and stretching up with a yawn. I smiled as my back popped loudly. Why don't we get out of Twilight's hair and head into town for some fun? Sunny's eyes lit up and she clapped her hooves together.
Yes. That's an awesome idea.
Giggling to herself, she flew out of the room and up the stairs, nearly knocking Spike down the steps. I stood there, alone in the kitchen, and rolled my eyes. Heading out to the library, I passed by Spike, who was headed to the kitchen, still rubbing sleep from his eyes, and grumbling something about Sunny under his breath. Looking out of the main room, I spied Twilight at her desk, a large pile of books around her. Hey, Sunny and I are heading into town. You need anything while we're out? I asked, walking up behind her. I scratched my collar as I looked over her shoulder, trying to glance a glimpse of what she was reading.
No, thank you,
she said curtly, not taking her eyes off her books. I stopped trying to see what she was up to and frowned slightly at that. Is something wrong? I asked, nudging her shoulder with a finger afterwards.
Nope, I'm perfectly fine,
she said. Her voice still had a bit of bite to it. Reaching down, I placed a hand on her back. I felt her stiffen, her eyes no longer roaming across the page, but staring at a single point. Picking up a nearby quill, I dipped it in a bottle of ink, and finding a blank piece of paper, I scratched out a quick message. If you ever want to talk about something, I'll be here to listen. Placing the note in front of her, I stood and gave her back a quick rub before turning around. I had only taken a few steps when I heard her speak.
Not for long, you won't be.
It was so faint that I wasn't completely sure if she had indeed spoken, or I just imagined it. I glanced back at her, waiting for more, but she remained hunched over her books, unmoving. I was just about to turn around and make her tell me what was wrong when Sunny came shooting down the stairs.
I've got my saddlebags. Let's go,
she said, a huge smile on her face. Deciding that I would deal with Twilight later tonight, I turned and headed towards the door. Grabbing the handle, I was about to open the door when a small whimper came from behind me. Glancing down, I saw Sunny sitting on the floor, staring up at me with big puppy dog eyes. She sniffled slightly as I looked down at her, causing me to groan softly. Fine. I sighed heavily and she squeaked in delight. Jumping up, setting a latch onto my back, her front hooves wrapping loosely around my shoulders as her head rested on top of mine. Swinging the door open, I cast one last glance back at Twilight before exiting the library. It was another warm, beautiful summer day. There weren't going to be many more like it, but with autumn coming around the corner. All in all, it was shaping up to be a perfect day. So why did I have a bad feeling about it? That, dear listener, is subtle foreshadowing, especially for the next half of this chapter. But what else? No. What isn't subtle is the love for my wonderful Patreons. Thank you, my tier 1s, Bounds, Kindness, Chase the Master, Dreamless, Portal, Hyperlink, Jason, HK4, AK Texture, Lord HiE, Night Game, Vicario, Pony Entertainment, Starlight Blaze, Rain Flicker, and Tyler Perry. My tier 2s, Captain Blueshadow, Key Alchemist, DJMX 2000, Elemental Wolf, The Animated Ghost, H1 Wolf King, Potato 20, Mr. Crazy Deacon, Solar Comet, 212 Trooper, Mackenzie McColas, Nocturne, Pavel Lennon, Redeemer of Dark, Solus Eclipse, Sword Brother Mordred, Artie Bryant, Riani Dragonwolf, and Steel Spark. A big thank you to my previous Titan tiers, Dark Guardian, Danish Dash, Maverick, and User 1842. And all our thank you to my current ones, Abyss Eclipse, and Silent Titan. I appreciate you guys' support so freaking much, and it means a ton to me. That aside, however, thank you so much for listening. This has been Firehearth. Have a wonderful day.